Look at a really cool assignment that we have here, and this has to deal with custom classes. So we're doing throws and we make our own exception, which I find really cool. So we want to create a custom defined exception class that will return, quote, weak password if the user's password does not meet the requirement. So this is pretty real life application, pretty cool. The requirements to password are the following. We need a small character, so like lowercase, we need a capital character. It also must be minimum 8 characters, and we need to include at least one of the following symbols that we have here. So knowing this, we can import our java.util hash set and our scanner. Now, with those imported, we can look at our method right here, our class. So we have public class 3, that's just the name that we chose. Our actual class for our exception is going to be down here, and we're going to go over this right now because it's the most important part. So we're going to have class. We can name it whatever we want. I chose to call it weak password exception just to keep it relevant to the instructions, and it needs to extend our exception. And if we wanted to, we can look at the Java documentation for exception. We've actually done this in a previous video that's in the playlist link below the like button. It has to do with exceptions, and you can see that from here we are going to have a constructor, and this constructor is going to be public, and then of course the name, and then inside of it it's going to have a super, and then we can write whatever text we want inside of here, and that is going to be outputted right here. So we'll look at that in a second. Inside of here, it's super easy code. All I did was I took user input, scanned it, stored it in answer, and we need to compare every single character and see if we have this as true or false. Now, these are the Boolean values. If small is false, capital is false, I symbol is false. Then we're going to also have a hash set. And this hash set is going to store all of our special symbols. It's unordered, so it should be a good runtime for this collection right here that we're using the hash set. So now with all this in mind, we're going to do all of this code right here, this checking. So we're going to say if our answer.length, so we're comparing this length to the string. If it's less than 8, well, it's a weak password, so we don't even need to go in this for loop. And to save some runtime, we're going to throw our exception right here. That's it. Now, we don't need a try catch, notice that here. All we need is to have this throws exception after the line that we want to implement. If we wanted to, we could use a try catch, and that is also in a previous video linked below the like button. But included in this throw new weak password exception, we also have to have it in our method right here. So we have this public static void, and then it needs to throw our weak password exception. And then we just throw it whenever we have a line that could possibly need it. So if our answer.length is less than 8, we're just going to throw it right here. Otherwise, we're going to go in here and we're going to check everything. Now, possibly a better way to implement this code would be to continue with what we have here. We're going to compare everything and then add another if statement below. And this if statement should just say if our small is true and capital and I symbol is true, then we are just going to return out of here, right? Because we don't need to keep checking this. If we keep checking this, it's going to extend our runtime. So to save some runtime, we could have another if statement right here, and it would be an if statement, not an else or an else if, because we want to be able to check this every single time. And we can say if small and, because it needs to be true. And whenever we have just small or just capital, whenever we have just the Boolean name, it's going to return a 1, not a 0, meaning that it is true. So if we have all of these, if they're all true, what we can do is just return. And then we are going to break out of this for loop. We don't need to be inside of it anymore because we've already checked these. And this is if someone has like a 1,000,000 character password, it'll save us some runtime possibly. So after we go through this entire for loop, if this is not true, if we do not have a small, or we do not have a capital, or we don't have an I symbol, because remember, we have to have all of these for it to be a strong password. So if these are not inside of here, we're going to throw a new weak password exception, which is going to call this. So we can come up here and run our code. We'll run our 3. It's going to ask us to input something. Let's just do a weak password first. So even if I do uppercase, like this, it meets the length requirement. It's not going to have a specific symbol, so it should throw a weak password exception, which we've defined right here. Now we can run it again, and we can do everything correct. We can have our letters, we can have our uppercase, and then we can throw in some exclamation points that'll count as a symbol, and we can see that we have a process finished. If we wanted to, we could have like an else statement right here that just says password successful or something like that. But that is how we would look at our exception class. So this was a really cool assignment, and that's how we would code for this.